On Tuesday, 25th January 2022 at 3 p.m, police were called to Poplar Road, the city of Coventry in the north of England. They found David Mario Lazar, a 5-year-old boy. He was unconscious. He had wounds to the face and body, causing his death. He had 29 separate injuries later noted on the post-mortem report. 2 of these, with particular significance, were a wound which penetrated the back of his skull and what appeared to be the fatal injury. There was a mark to the heart causing significant blood loss. The family had been living in that house since March 2021. In the house, you had Mario, his mother Christina, and his father Dorinel. Mario's grandmother, Alena Anghel, joined them a month or so later. Mario himself was a beautiful, bright boy who had started school a few months before. Christina, his mother, described Mario as the most precious thing. He was her world. He was happy and smiling, dancing, always had a smile on his face. He was a beautiful boy. Now, at first, Alena, the grandmother, had a good relationship with Mario, but then, on the 25th of January 2022, Alena was looking after Mario. Mario's mother and father were at work. Both of them were working very hard to support their family. They tried to arrange their working hours to be with Mario as much as possible, but they were happy to leave Mario with Alena for a couple of hours. So on the 25th of January, Christina dropped Mario at school and then Christina went to work. Dorinel, the father, dropped Mario home after school where he stayed with Alena. She then started making soup because that's what Mario wanted to eat. Dorinel did ask Mario if he wanted to come to work with him that day, but Mario said that he wanted to stay home with his grandmother Alena. Alena was next seen at 5 p.m. at a local store, just around the corner from the house. She was in a highly distressed state. Given her expression, the security guard and the police spoke to her in the store. She then told them she did something quite heinous. This led police to the house where Mario's body was found. They also found a kitchen knife that was used on him. Police attempted to revive Mario, but it was too late. Alena was then arrested, but her mental state was such that she was not interviewed until a few months later. At that time, she admitted taking Mario's life with a kitchen. She claimed she is mentally unwell and that it was not her first episode of mental illness. She spent her life in Romania until 2021, when she came to the UK to look after Mario. While living in Romania, she had a long history of mental health issues. They resulted in a total of 8 stays in psychiatric units between 2009 and 2020. Essentially, every year and a half, she had to stay at a psychiatric ward. Wow. She had received medication for those conditions. At the same time, she was on steroids following the removal of her adrenal glands in 2010. Now, a significant point is that she had never previously exhibited any violence when suffering from a bout of mental illness. When she came to Britain, however, she did not pursue treatment for her mental health conditions. For a time, she took her medication irregularly and she thought, you know what, when I need it, I'll take it, otherwise, I'm alright. But then, at the turn of the year, this is when she ran out of her medication, and the result was that her illness came back fast and acutely and had no medication or support in place. She went from appearing normal to becoming ill. It was referred to as a precipitous relapse, and those around her, including her daughter Christina, who had seen her ill before and had taken her to obtain treatment, saw no signs of significant changes to her mental health in the days leading up to the crime. By the afternoon of that day, she was suffering what Dr. Scally, her psychiatrist during the trial, calls elaborate, systemized delusional beliefs. She was subject to extreme paranoid delusions, during the course of which she was convinced that her grandson was in danger of terrible suffering and that it would be best to take his life. That's what she did. It's also important to note that when she was arrested, she was deemed not mentally fit to be interviewed. She was interviewed a little bit after the death, but then it was only 9 months later where she was interviewed for more details. After she was arrested, she was hospitalized and examined by a number of mental health professionals. One of those was Dr. Scally, a UK responsible mental health clinician, diagnosed her with schizophrenia and a moderate depressive disorder and had been treating her for those conditions. Another doctor, Dr. Sajid, instructed by the defense, concurred with the diagnosis of schizophrenia and depression and found that she suffered a full-blown relapse within a couple of weeks of running her out of medication. She also had been examined by Dr. Nicholas Kennedy on behalf of the prosecution and Dr. Vivek Furtado for the defense. They also agreed with the diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Her daughter, Christina, during the trial, read out a victim impact statement. She says that she still cannot believe what happened, and the pain of this never goes away despite pictures of Mario, which she keeps all over the house. Now, she does have another baby called Yanis, born since Mario's death, and she says the babies look alike. Now, in the trial, the judge told the grandma she was suffering for paranoid schizophrenia after being on and off medication since 2009. The judge said that you could not break free of this illness at the time of the offense. This arose from abnormalities of mental functioning. The disease of paranoid schizophrenia from which you were suffering caused a defect of reason. In other words, the judge felt that this depression, if you like, this schizophrenia, caused hallucinations and delusions as well as severe distress arising from the delusions. So because of all of this, the judge felt this was strong enough for him to think the nature of the illness provided an explanation for her actions. The judge was sure that she would never have hurt the child if she was not mentally ill. So she was given an indefinite hospital order. In other words, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to hospital. So she was with the boy, she got a knife, she used the knife on him, and unfortunately he died. Here in America and over there in the UK where this crime took place, you know and I know insanity is a very hard thing to prove. So you gotta respect the judge's decision in this case. Poor Mario, the boy did nothing. Tell me what you think. And now the disturbing case of Jovonie Ochoa. On December the 25th, 2003, emergency personnel responded to a call for medical assistance at the residence of Mary De Leon. When emergency personnel arrived at the residence, they found her 4-year-old grandson, Jovonie Ochoa, lying on the floor without a pulse and not breathing. Emergency personnel attempted to revive Jovonie, but the rescue efforts were unsuccessful. Jovonie was pronounced dead at the hospital a short while later. De Leon was charged with the offenses of injury to a child, unlawful restraint, and endangering a child. After an autopsy revealed Jovonie died of long-term starvation. The arrest warrant for this case states that Jovonie was severely malnourished and was skin and bones. It indicates that he was lying on his back for several weeks before his death, and the contents of his stomach revealed very little other than what appeared to be curdled milk. In the last statements of the warrant, it lists both his uncle and his grandmother for taping Jovonie's hands and feet, him repeatedly. Now, there's many suspects in this case, so let me tell you right now who is who. Jovian is the victim. Mary De Leon is his grandmother. Lazar is Jovian's mother and Mary's daughter. Dolores Esqueda is Mary's daughter and Jovian's aunt. And finally, Geronimo Esqueda is Jovian's uncle. Now, in the trial, the records showed that the state presented 8 witnesses. The state's first witness was Craig Allen, an emergency medical technician. He testified he was dispatched to the residence on December the 25th, 2003 at 4 a.m. to respond to a cardiac arrest in progress. Upon his arrival at the scene, he observed Jovonie lying on his back on a hallway floor. Allen stated Jovonie looked like a skeleton with skin. Allen stated the child had no pulse and was not breathing. Although he thought Jovonie was deceased, he attempted to resuscitate the child. Allen further stated he tried to secure information from De Leon regarding Jovonie's name, age, and medical history, as he tried to revive the boy. According to Alan, De Leon told him she did not know any of the requested information concerning the child. A second emergency medical technician, David Waterson, also testified at trial. He stated he was part of a second team of medical technicians dispatched to De Leon's residence. After Waterson was initially dispatched to the residence, he was notified that someone from the residence had called and cancelled the request for medical assistance because everything was okay. Before returning to a station, however, Waterson was notified that a pediatric arrest had in fact occurred at De Leon's residence and his unit needed to respond. Waterson arrived at the house with his partner and began to assist the other medical technicians in their effort to resuscitate Jovonie. He testified Jovonie looked like one of the individuals who were in the concentration camps during World War II. Wow. Waterson, like Allen, stated De Leon would not provide technicians with any information concerning Jovonie. Finally, Waterson stated Jovonie was taken to a hospital and pronounced dead at 5 a.m. on December 25th, 2003. Now, Bexar County Sheriff's Deputy Brian Stack testified that he was dispatched to the residence on December 25th. He stated he observed Jovonie lying on the floor and receiving aid from medical personnel when he arrived at the scene. The officer testified Jovonie reminded him of Holocaust victims. He stated Jovonie's legs were extremely thin. The joints, the knees, the elbows looked to be about the size of tennis balls perched on the top of toothpicks. The head looked out of proportion to the size of the body. The officer testified that De Leon told him Jovonie's mother, Lazar, dropped the boy off at her house at 7 p.m. on December 24th. Lazar, the mother, was a heroin addict. Upon seeing Jovonie's physical condition, De Leon allegedly asked Jovonie's mother about the boy's health and was told Jovonie was under a doctor's care and not to worry about it. De Leon told the officer that nothing unusual happened with respect to Jovonie that evening. The officer stated that Jovonie allegedly played with his sisters, opened Christmas presents, and fell asleep at 10 p.m. Now, De Leon indicated that her family called for medical assistance as soon as they discovered Jovonie unresponsive. A second officer, Alfred Damiani, testified he was assigned to investigate the cause of Jovonie's death. According to Damiani, De Leon provided investigators with a written statement concerning the events surrounding Jovonie's death. Officer Damiani was permitted to read the statement during the trial. I'm going to read that statement to you now. I am the grandmother of Jovonie Ochoa. I believe he was the son of my son. I always treated him like he was my grandson. Yesterday evening, December 24th at 7 p.m., Lazar Ochoa came to my home on Potter Valley. She arrived with Jovonie and his sisters. She was also with her lover. All Lazar told me that she needs to drop off the children. She didn't say for how long or where she was going. When I saw Jovonie, I was concerned right away. When Lazar brought Jovonie to the house, I didn't want to keep him because of his condition. He was skinny. He was skin and bones. When my daughter, Dolores, saw Jovonie, she asked Lazar why he was so thin. Lazar told her that Jovonie eats, but he doesn't gain weight. Anyway, my husband didn't want me to take Jovonie because of the way he was, but I decided to take him anyway. I thought I would let him stay over the weekend and then call child services on Monday. Jovonie stayed to play with the other kids, and after a while, he got a Christmas present and continued to play. A little later, I fed Jovonie about half a package of crackers. I put Jovonie to bed around midnight. He said he was tired. When he went to bed, he looked fine to me. At some point during the night, I checked on Jovonie because I was going to move him to another bed. When I did, I noted that he was moaning in his sleep. I called my daughter, Dolores, for her to come and check on Jovonie. She said he wasn't breathing. Dolores called 911 and they told her to give Jovonie mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. While Dolores did that, I went outside and waited for the ambulance so they would be able to find us easily. When the ambulance arrived, they started working on Jovonie and they took him to the hospital. Last time that I had seen Jovonie was during the summer. When I saw him, he was just as thin as he was last night. In addition to being thin, he also had bruises on his face and forehead. They were not recent. They were yellow, like they were going away. That's all I know about the situation. I will cooperate in this investigation. Now, Officer Damiani testified he concluded that Jovonie's death was caused by starvation. He further testified his investigation led him to believe Jovonie had lived with De Leon since October 2003. The officer noted, however, that Jovonie may have started living with De Leon as early as August. Another police officer, Jesse Padilla, testified he helped execute a search warrant on the residence. He stated he searched the child's bedroom and observed the remains of fresh duct tape on the railings of a bunk bed in the room. Officer Padilla stated he also found a cloth cord tied to the railing of the bunk bed. Now, Escada, the other daughter, also testified during the case. She testified the first time she saw Jovonie was at a birthday party for her daughter in August 2003. She stated Jovonie came with De Leon and appeared skinny but kind of healthy. She further stated her sister Dolores had told her that Jovonie was living with De Leon at the time of the party. When Maria Escada asked De Leon whether Jovonie was residing with her, De Leon responded that he was not. Escada testified she visited De Leon's home approximately every 2 weeks. She stated she would see Jovonie every once in a while when she was at the residence. She testified she believed Jovonie was living with De Leon during that period because Jovonie had a duffel bag of clothes at the residence. She stated she confirmed her belief in October 2003 when she heard De Leon tell Jovonie's mother, Lazar, that she would take custody and care of Jovonie. This is important, of course, because if Jovonie was staying with his grandmother, De Leon, well then she is culpable for his starvation and death. Escada indicated she confronted De Leon regarding Jovonie's health after one of her visits to De Leon's home because she noticed Jovonie looked very skinny. According to Escada, De Leon indicated that Jovonie was sick and that she could not afford to take him to the hospital. In addition, De Leon indicated that she could not bring the child to the hospital because she was not Jovonie's parent. Escada testified she would secretly try to feed Jovonie when she would visit the boy at De Leon's house because the child was always hungry. She stated she did not tell De Leon if she fed Jovonie because De Leon would get mad. When De Leon became aware that Escada was feeding the boy, De Leon would chastise her for feeding Jovonie too much because the boy would throw it up. Escada further noted that De Leon refused to allow Jovonie outside to play when he was under her care. Escada stated she witnessed an alarming event at De Leon's house sometime during the month of October 2003. She said she discovered De Leon in a bedroom binding Jovonie with duct tape when she arrived at the residence to visit Jovonie. De Leon told her that she was binding Jovonie because she was playing cops and robbers with the children. When Escada removed the tape from Jovonie's mouth and confronted De Leon about her treatment of Jovonie, De Leon responded by telling Escada, "It's none of your business, get out of my house." Escada returned to the residence approximately 2 or 3 weeks later. Unfortunately, when she came back, she again saw Jovonie with duct tape. This time, however, De Leon told Escada she was playing cowboys and Indians with the children. De Leon told her, "Shut up and mind your own business." Escada nevertheless advised De Leon to get Jovonie medical attention because Jovonie appeared even skinnier than he did on Escada's last visit. De Leon responded that she could not take Jovonie to the doctor because she lacked medical insurance. Escada offered to get Jovonie medical assistance, but De Leon refused. Escada returned to the residence the first weeks of December 2003 to determine what Jovonie wanted for Christmas. De Leon, however, refused to let Escada see Jovonie. Escada stated the last time she saw Jovonie was on December 24th, 2003, when he was lying on a bunk bed covered with a blanket. De Leon refused to let Escada remove the blanket or hold the boy. Escada noted that Jovonie looked the worst she'd ever seen him. Escada finally testified she received 2 phone calls from De Leon after she left the residence. During the first phone call, De Leon asked Escada to watch her nieces and nephews because De Leon needed to take Jovonie to the hospital as he was throwing up. During the second call, after Jovonie's death, De Leon told Escada that she knew she was going to jail and that investigators wanted to speak with Escada. De Leon also encouraged Escada not to tell the truth and to tell the cops that she got Jovonie on Christmas Eve. Now, Dr. Randall Frost, the deputy chief medical examiner for Bexar County, testified he was responsible for performing the autopsy. He stated stool cultures and blood spot tests showed Jovonie did not suffer from any metabolic diseases. Frost stated he also performed an internal and external examination of the body. The examination revealed Jovonie was extremely small and weighed only 15 pounds at the time of his death. 15 pounds? Wow. He looked very malnourished and had lost significant muscle mass throughout his body. Frost observed numerous abrasions and bruises all over Jovonie's body. He also noted that he found tape residue on the child's wrists. The internal examination found no fat on the child's body. The examination revealed no signs of disease, but did show Jovonie's thymus gland was abnormal. Frost stated an abnormally shrunken gland is indicative of long-term starvation. Based on his findings, Frost concluded Jovonie died as a result of long-term starvation and neglect. Now, the state's final witness, Dr. Nancy Kellogg, a professor of pediatrics at the University of Texas, she believed Jovonie died of long-term starvation. She stated Jovonie's appearance suggested he had been subjected to chronic severe stress, arising from months of starvation prior to his death. Kellogg said that the abrasions found on Jovonie's body may have been caused by duct tape. She stated the abrasions and other physical evidence in the case indicate Jovonie had been restrained for a prolonged period of time. Kellogg stated Jovonie did not suffer from any diseases that would have caused his death. Lastly, Kellogg stated Jovonie likely had no motor capabilities for at least several days before his death due to a lack of blood flow in his muscles. She believed he was simply physically unable to do anything in the days before his death, including eating, opening presents, and walking. Now, after the state rested, the defense recalled Esqueda to clarify parts of her testimony. The defense also recalled Esqueda to elicit testimony that De Leon was briefly incarcerated during October 2003. She stated that De Leon's husband, Juan Palacios, cared for Jovonie when De Leon was incarcerated. She further testified De Leon was primarily responsible for taking care of Jovonie when she was not incarcerated. Finally, De Leon herself testified on her own behalf. She said she was the individual responsible for caring for Lazar's two daughters at the time of Esqueda's daughter's birthday party in August 2003. She claimed Jovonie was still living with his mother Lazar at that time. De Leon testified that when she brought Jovonie to the birthday party, Jovonie was skinny and would fall down if he tried to run. Wow. De Leon stated she was concerned about Jovonie, but chose not to take him to the doctor. According to De Leon, Jovonie stayed with her for several days after the party. She saw Jovonie for a couple of days in September and did not see him again until October. She stated she was arrested in September 2003 for theft. She indicated she was incarcerated for around 2 weeks. 2 weeks? I've slept longer than 2 weeks. After her release from prison, De Leon did not see Jovonie until November. When Jovonie's mother dropped the boy off at the house for a few days, De Leon testified she was only responsible for caring for Jovonie and claimed that when he was at her house at the time of his death, Lazar remained Jovonie's primary caretaker. According to De Leon, Jovonie appeared sick and did not eat well when he stayed. De Leon allegedly confronted Jovonie's mother about the child's health, but took no other action concerning the boy. She stated she saw Jovonie one other time between Thanksgiving and his death. De Leon noted Jovonie looked terrible by that time. On December the 24th, 2003, Jovonie's mother unexpectedly dropped Jovonie off at De Leon's residence. De Leon testified she did not want Jovonie to stay with her because he did not look good. But nevertheless, she let Jovonie stay because she had no other choice. When Lazar dropped him off and left, De Leon fed Jovonie crackers since he did not want to eat the plate of food she had given the boy. Jovonie later sat with his sisters and looked at the Christmas tree. De Leon indicated Jovonie was able to move under his own volition that evening. De Leon stated she checked on Jovonie throughout the night after he fell asleep. According to De Leon, the call for medical assistance was done when she discovered Jovonie was not breathing. She testified she knew she was going to jail. She further testified that she neither starved Jovonie nor bound Jovonie to the bed. She also denied asking Esqueda to lie for her. She claimed the one mistake she made for the boy was not seeking help for him. Now, the trial did take a bit of a twist. You see, the daughter, Maria Esqueda, testified. She said she overheard a conversation between De Leon and Lazar, where De Leon expressly agreed to take care of Jovonie and take custody of the boy. The record further reflects that from the time De Leon agreed to accept responsibility, De Leon carried herself like the child's caretaker. For example, De Leon was the individual who prohibited Esqueda from taking Jovonie to get medical attention, who had arguments with Esqueda for secretly feeding Jovonie, and who determined if and when Esqueda could visit Jovonie. It was believed De Leon's express promise to care for Jovonie, together with her words and actions following the promise to Jovonie's mother, would cause a reasonable person to conclude that De Leon accepted responsibility for protecting, feeding and sheltering Jovonie. So, to conclude on the story, 4 people in total were charged with his death. The grandmother, Mary De Leon, was sentenced to life in prison. Her daughter, Dolores, and son, Geronimo Esqueda, were also charged. Dolores and Geronimo were sentenced to 10 years. Lazar Ochoa pled guilty to endangering a child and was sentenced to 2 years in jail. To be fair, I don't think the custody in this case matters. I know it does in terms of who is most culpable, but at the end of the day, Lazar, you knew your son needed help. You did not feed him also, you muppet. 2 years. You got away with this one. As for the grandmother, I don't know why you would treat your grandson that way. I have children. Both my children have a great relationship with their grandparents. It's vital. The support system's very important. As a father myself though, right, seeing my children, it fills me with joy. So I can only imagine the grandparents being filled with joy just as much, maybe more. I can only imagine how I will feel once my kids have kids. You can't help it but be like, wow, and be happy, right? So to treat your grandson that way, what the actual fuck? Anyway, comment. Tell me what you think. And now the case of Terry Borgia. As you can see, today's theme centers around grandmas. Friends, today I'm going to tell you the stories of Terry Rita Borgia and Christine Coffman. In both of these stories, the lives of grandkids were taken. If you end up liking this video, please subscribe and follow my Instagram, link is in the description. A mother's love is unconditional. Her love knows no bounds and no laws or rules. No matter what her child ends up doing, she is someone who cannot help but still care for the child. Terry Rita Borgia is one of those mothers, and she could not stop loving her child even though her child supposedly did the unthinkable. Terry gave up the comforts of her own life because the mother inside of her could not let her daughter go to jail. Terry Rita Borgia was born on May 2nd, 1949. She was married to Vito Borgia for 32 years before he died. Together, they had 3 lovely daughters. These daughters were Vicky Antishin, Amelia Alcamash, and Tanina Borgia. By the time she reached old age, Terry had 9 grandchildren. Her daughter Amelia married Bashar Alkamika and had a beautiful son whom they named D'Angelo Tobiah. Amelia and Bashar lived in Clinton Township in an apartment with their son, and it was on January the 11th, 2010. Both the parents were out, and the 4-year-old D'Angelo was in the care of his grandmother Terry, who was 65 at the time. His aunt Tonina Borgia was also taking care of him on this day. Amelia and Bashar would often leave D'Angelo with his grandmother whenever the two were busy. However, this time what happened left an unfilled void in their lives. Somewhere between 7 AM and 8 AM, a 911 call was made. The caller reported the drowning of a child, and the address was Amelia and Bashar's apartment. The first to reach the apartment was a team of firefighters who found the front door locked. They knocked on the door, and a few seconds later, Terry received them. The firefighters recalled that the old woman had a very calm demeanor. She brought them in and led them to the drowned child. She walked to a bathroom along the main hallway, and the group of firefighters followed her. During this time, she did not say anything. The firefighters, upon entering the bathroom, witnessed a disturbing scene. A child lay lifeless on his back on the bathroom floor. It was D'Angelo Tobiah. Tobiah's aunt Tanina who was kneeling next to the boy and was on the phone with an unknown person. Tanina appeared more concerned than Terry. A 4-year-old boy died in his own home while in the care of his family members, and most of all, his grandmother was emotionless about it. The firefighters immediately started performing first aid on unconscious D'Angelo. While they were making efforts to bring him back to life, another firefighter named Mark Turo started questioning the two women. So Terry explained that her daughter Tanina, the aunt of D'Angelo, was asleep on the couch and she had put D'Angelo in the bathtub. She mentioned that she left the boy unattended and did not know how he ended up unconscious. Though it seemed that Terry was calm on the outside, upon questioning it was obvious that the two were very much shaken, disturbed and startled by what had happened. Turo claimed they were unable to tell the boy's date of birth and even his full name. Moreover, at first, Terry told Turo that D'Angelo was her son rather than her grandson. It seemed as if the two had a hard time accepting the reality of what had just happened. Police arrived at this crime scene and Officer Preston Susala started interrogating the only two witnesses. Susala recalled the completely opposite emotional state of the grandmother and the aunt while they were being interviewed. She said that Terry was composed and calm, whereas Tanina was panicking. Terry was also questioned by Leo Melis, a police detective. Terry gave them a timeline of the incident. She said that she woke up in the morning around 6 a.m., brushed her teeth and took a bath. After that, she prepared the bathtub for D'Angelo as well, filling it with water. Once the tub was full, she went to D'Angelo, who was sleeping on the couch in his pajamas. She picked the boy up and put him in the bathtub. After that, she went to the kitchen, leaving the boy unwatched for 25 minutes until her daughter, Tanina, found him not moving. From this, it was obvious the grandmother made a mistake and the investigation focused on this. The officers handcuffed Terry and took her to a police station. The evidence left at the crime scene was gathered. The floor around the bathtub was wet and the tub had 5 inches water still left in it. The officers also found wet pajamas and a wet mop in the apartment. D'Angelo was taken to Henry Ford Hospital in an ambulance. The doctors could not revive him and he was pronounced dead. Now his body went through an autopsy and what happened to him could not be explained through Terry's testimony. Daniel Spitz, who performed the autopsy, was certain that the poor boy was subjected to some sort of physical pressure when he was in the water. D'Angelo had bruises on his neck and scalp indicating physical trauma. Broken blood vessels in the eye were also found, which hinted at high pressure being applied to his face and head. D'Angelo's lips were also bruised from the inside. It seemed as if his lips were pushed against his teeth with force. So Daniel Spitz said, well, the statement Terry made that he drowned, that can't be correct. He may have drowned, but someone forced him. Someone applied pressure onto him. And if Terry wasn't in the room, well then who was it? Daniel was in no doubt that D'Angelo did not die of drowning by accident, rather someone forcefully kept his face underwater. This changed the nature of the investigation and the death was declared a homicide. Since Terry was the only one who openly admitted to putting D'Angelo in the bathtub, she was the obvious suspect. By this time, D'Angelo's parents were told about their dreadful loss, and they were broken to know that another family member harmed their son. Now it was time for Terry to be tried by law. Terry Borgia was the defendant, and Tanina Borgia was the prime witness. The first trial started on June the 8th, 2012, and it ended in a mistrial. Let me say that again. So you got Terry, who is the mother of Tanina. They're the two suspects, so to speak. Terry's the suspect, Tanina is the witness. That is a crazy situation to be in. Terry being the grandmother of the victim D'Angelo, and Tanina being the aunt of D'Angelo. The mistrial occurred because a statement made by the defendant Terry to the cops was declared inadmissible when it was submitted to the jury. Then a second trial was held. This time, Tanina, the prime witness, was unable to testify, so another mistrial was declared. Yet another mistrial occurred for the third time when the jury could not render a verdict. It wasn't until the fourth trial at the Macomb County Circuit Court where Terry's fate was decided. During these trials, something unexpected came to light about D'Angelo's death. Mark Haddad, the defendant's attorney, argued that his client was innocent. Haddad did not at all deny that D'Angelo was killed. The defendant's representative made no effort to convince the jury that the boy's death was an accident. Instead, he gave a completely different argument. Mark suggested that it was actually Tanina who took the life of the baby, and Terry was just trying to cover up for her own daughter. Haddad's position was strengthened by the statements of Vicky Antishin, Terry's other daughter, which she made in court. She said that after D'Angelo died, Tanina stayed with Vicky for a few days. During her stay, Tanina used satanic talk while conversing with Vicky's children. She also testified that Tanina once forced one of Vicky's kids out of the front door of the house with an intention to kidnap the child. Now, if that wasn't a red flag, then her next statement was sure to put Tanina on the list of suspects. Vicky testified that on one of the days that she took Tanina to court, Tanina admitted that she's the one that took the life of the child. Vicky also gave an important, noteworthy detail. She said that even though D'Angelo was a 4-year-old child, his physical strength was extraordinary for his age. She refused to believe that Terry, a weak 65-year-old grandmother, was easily able to overcome D'Angelo, who at the moment of the forced drowning was probably resisting physically. Vicky also stated that Terry had taken care of D'Angelo many times in the past, and she always took great care of him. So now in the courtroom, the fingers were starting to be turned in Tanina. But she was not there for her mother's 4th trial, so the jury reviewed her statements made at the previous mistrials. During one of the mistrials, Tanina testified that on the 30th of November 2012, she had not killed D'Angelo and that she was confident that her mother Terry was indeed the culprit. And this is where I go back to what a situation to be in. You gotta snitch on your mother, or your mother's gotta snitch on you. I don't envy it, that's for sure. Terry and D'Angelo were together in the living room when she went to bed. The next day, she woke up at 5 a.m. when Terry knocked on her door, telling Tanina that she had taken the life of D'Angelo. Tanina walked up to the bathroom and saw her nephew lifeless. She also said that she performed CPR on D'Angelo in hopes that he would regain consciousness, but Terry refused to give her any help during the process. Tanina also gave a theory as to why Terry would have taken the life of her own grandson. Tanina claimed that Terry had enough of being a grandmother and she got sick of continually taking care of D'Angelo. It may also be possible that Terry's poor financial status forced her to do what she did. She also revealed her mother's unstable mental state in the past years. Terry, supposedly, had attempted to commit suicide in the past, and her daughters tried to send her to a mental hospital. In fact, before the trial started, Terry was declared mentally unable to take part in trials, though she was allowed to participate after her stay at the Center for Forensic Psychiatry. However, the psychiatrist examining her did have doubts about whether she even knew that what she claims to do was criminal. While testifying in court, Tanina opened up about her mental issues as well. She said that she suffered from bipolar syndrome and psychosis. She was on antipsychotic meds most of her adult life. However, the defense attorney did not back up when such claims were made about his client. He tried to prove that Tanina's testimony cannot be considered valid since she had given 6 different accounts about D'Angelo's death to the police. Tanina would often change her statements, and there was no guarantee that she would not change these statements as well. Tanina's claim that Terry was tired of being a grandmother and a babysitter also did not sit right with the jury and the prosecutors, since Terry was one of the people who helped deliver D'Angelo when he was born. Terry had always shown love to all her grandkids. Vicky also testified in the favor of her mother, saying that the reason her mental health declined in the past several years was that it was hard for her to cope with the loss of her husband. And Vicky said despite all of this, she had been a wonderful grandmother. Vicky was quick to highlight that Tanina confidently calling her mother guilty was nothing out of the ordinary. She said that Tanina was a hot-tempered person who had anger issues and would sometimes call Terry a white Nazi. And considering how she could use these words against her mother, it's no surprise that she testified against her mother. While the trials were going on, Bashar and Amelia, the parents of D'Angelo, were becoming more certain that the real murderer is not Terry, but Tanina. They raised their doubts to the judge and the police many times. They told that one time visiting Terry at the Macomb County Jail before the last trial, she hinted at what the two suspected all along. Amelia went up to her mother, and her mother said quietly, "I didn't do it." The parents of the victim argue that Tanina should have been arrested along with Terry. She should have been as vigorously interviewed by the police and the investigators as Terry was. This probably would have gathered more evidence against Tanina. However, the prosecutor, William Cataldo, found it absurd that the defense attorney claims that his client is innocent when the client herself has admitted to the crime several times, and Cataldo was insistent on finding Terry guilty. Throughout this back and forth blame game, there was one fishy aspect of the trial. Terry, the defendant, never testified. Neither did she make any efforts to prove herself not guilty. The one time she admitted to putting D'Angelo in the bath, she claimed that his death was purely accidental and she never planned to kill him. In other words, she put him in the bath, she went off to the kitchen and she forgot. This is all an accident. Deep down inside, everyone in the courtroom knew why that was. She was intentionally taking the blame for her daughter. The daughter who used to call her a white Nazi and unhesitantly testified against her. In the end, the court found more evidence against Terry than Tanina. Considering Terry's calm attitude after the death of her grandson, her constant confessions to the crime, and the fact that she personally made no efforts to prove herself innocent, made the jury declare Terry guilty. After 3 mistrials and a long 4th trial, it was all coming to an end. On the 12th of June 2013, the day of the verdict, Tonina Borgia addressed her family in the proceedings saying, "I love all my children. I loved D'Angelo very much." To this, Bashar, the father of D'Angelo, said, "Tell us the truth." Terry's representatives, knowing that their client was about to be declared guilty, applied for a defense motion for a new trial, but the judge rejected this. Terry Rita Borgia was charged with felony murder, first-degree child abuse, and involuntary manslaughter in her grandson's death. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. According to witnesses, she was expressionless when the verdict was read. After the verdict, she expressed her thanks to her attorneys and then walked with the bailiffs. Terry Rita Borgia passed away on May the 29th, 2018. Now you could make a case that Terry is probably the one that may have suffered the most. Her daughter is being blamed for taking the life of her grandson. Her grandson is dead. Her other daughter, the mother of the child, is going to be devastated. Her son-in-law is going to be devastated. Imagine all this pressure on her. Now, if it is true that she put him in the bathtub and then she forgot, that's an unforgivable sin. It doesn't matter if it's accidental. It's your job to remember. If we assume that's true. But it seems from the mother, Amelia, to the other sister, Vicky, that Tanina is more likely the culprit. I don't think in this severe situation that a family would choose sides with the bias in their minds. I think sometimes a situation is so severe, everyone is just going to be honest. Intuition is a gift that we have. And when Amelia went to the jail and her mother said, "I didn't do it," there was something inside Amelia that told her, "My mother is telling us the truth." That is intuition. Now, of course, I'm stupid, right? So my intuition isn't always correct, but you understand what I'm saying. Now, I think one of the reasons why Terry was so calm during all of this is because I think she went into a state of, not psychosis, but she just couldn't believe what happened. She was numb, emotionless, and she's thinking, well, my daughter has a whole life ahead of her. I'm 65 years old. I love my daughter no matter what. It's mother's love. I'm going to take the fall for her. But ultimately, I don't really know who did what. Terry was 69 years old when she died. She was laid to rest at Cadillac Memorial Gardens East in Clinton Township. With her death, Amelia and Bashar, who were once determined to fight for their son and Terry, have lost all hopes of closure. And I think closure, for me, is what makes me feel the most for the surviving victim's family. They'll never get closure because none of this makes sense. Comment, tell me what you think. We now move on to Christine Coffman. But before I get to the story, let me ask you a question. In this hypothetical world, let's assume you and your spouse, you're not getting along, right? You keep arguing and you decide, okay, we need to have a divorce. And let's just say your spouse is the one that files for divorce. Now, if you were to get revenge on your spouse, what would you do? This is all tied into the Christine story. But I want to know, if you wanted to get revenge, if you were going to be childish about it, what would you do? I guess there's two logical things, right? Number one, maybe go and find someone else real quick to make them jealous. Or number two, maybe date their friends or something. If you really wanted revenge, that is probably the most logical thing you can do if in this context you had to do it. Well, I'm about to tell you what Christine did. This took place on June the 29th, 2005 in Clackamas County in the state of Oregon. Christine was around 44 years old at the time and she was married to Duffy Coffman. But their marriage was very rocky. It was said they were on the verge of divorce, but it seems Duffy is who spearheaded this. You see, Christine, she felt unappreciated. She was thinking, we've been married all this time, and now he wants to divorce me. She felt rejected by this. So she thinks, you know what? I'm going to get this guy where it hurts. Duffy had a daughter by the name of Laura Acevedo, who had a 4-year-old boy named Matal Sanchez. Matal being the grandson of Duffy and the step-grandson of Christine. On June the 29th, 2005, Laura asked Christine to watch Matal while she takes a shower. When Laura was out of the shower, the house was empty and she couldn't find Matal nor Christine. She then reported her son to the police as missing, to which Christine then suddenly returned to the house with blood on her clothes and Matal nowhere to be seen. Laura then calls the police. Christine told detectives that the child had frequent nosebleeds and that she used her shirt to wipe him clean. But the pattern of the blood on her clothes was not consistent with her explanation. In that initial interview, she also told police she had been out berry picking, which could explain the stains on her shirt. A forensic scientist who tested the clothes said that in addition to the blood, he also found an area on the chest of the shirt where it appeared berries had been rubbed over an underlying blood stain. Later that same day, Laura was questioned herself. She told police that her mother-in-law, Christine, had a history of trying to commit suicide. In fact, once she tried doing it by cutting her throat, but it wasn't successful. Christine was also on mental health medication, but she did seem normal leading up to the boy's disappearance. The boy's disappearance prompted enormous media attention and an extensive search involving local police, FBI agents, detectives from the Oregon State Police, the Clackamas County Interagency Crime Team, search and rescue teams, and a helicopter from the Oregon Army National Guard. But 3 days later, Christine led the police to the body. Christine led police to the body of Matal Sanchez off a heavily wooded stretch of road about 25 miles from the boy's suburban home. Christine was arrested and then confessed to the boy's murder. She said she first tried to strangle him, then she struck him in the head with a rock. But then after Christine was arrested, darker details about Matal's life was revealed. A Seattle area babysitter who took care of the boy for weeks at a time when he was 4 to 8 months old said she filed 2 reports alleging the boy was poorly cared for with Oregon's Child Protective Authorities in 2001. The question remains, why is he with the Child Protective Authorities when he's with his parents? His parents are there, they haven't abandoned him, so what could or what was really going on? To conclude on this story, during the trial, Christine pleaded guilty and in March 2007 was sentenced to life in prison. Now this story had very limited information. The idea that she took his life to get back at her husband was a theory made up by police because she didn't actually give a theory herself. The police said that she didn't give a motive, so this is the best they could come up with. Also, given the limited information, I'm not too sure if Matal was the grandson or the step-grandson of Christine. Either way, she took this boy's life and the only explanation we have is because she hated her husband. And I don't understand this. It makes no sense to me, right? If A pisses me off, right, why on earth would I want to go and take it out on JKLMN? That's who the grandson is in this case, right? Like, you're pissed off at your husband, you may even take it out on his mother, right? Go and complain to her, oh, my husband's treating me bad or whatever, right? You could also say that maybe The only explanation I can have where some of this, like it doesn't make sense, but where I can be like, okay, Christine, I see why you were so angry, is if she suffered domestic abuse. That's the only explanation. If she thinks this guy hits me, he beats me, right? He takes out all his anger on me, and then I want to grid his grandson, the one thing he loves most. There's no justifying it. It's not okay, but that is the only way I can understand her anger. I can't understand her actions, but that is the only way. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Comment, let me know. Thanks for watching.